Welcome to Exiles, a Gospel of Mark podcast. We're coming to you from Grace Church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where we're taking what we learned about ancient truths in the person of Jesus into our everyday life. Check out whoisgrace.com/Mark for the sermon and resources we're using for our conversation. Thanks for joining us today for season 4. In this section of Mark, the King's Narrow Path, we're following Jesus and his disciples as they turn south from the region of Galilee toward Jerusalem. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
You know what I just realized?
What?
That this is recorded.
Yeah.
I didn't just realize that because I press record.
Okay.
But every time you do the intro, we look so not interested.
Well, that's okay.
If you watch the video, we're all just
you're all like,
yeah. That's just my teaser to go watch the YouTube video now. That's all.
Oh,
So
please
you're welcome,
don't.
guys.
Please don't.
We're really interested.
I forget that we're on video.
We watch
Me too. I can't think about it, or I would be. I would act
So
totally
who knows
different.
what gems you might find if you watch this on YouTube.
Anyway,
sorry.
That's fine. If you were sent back in time to about 1,000 years ago, how would you prove you're from the future?
Ooh.
So if you're sent back to the year 1024.
Mm-hmm. How would you prove you're from the future?
What was happening at that time in the world? Was it
It
bubonic
like the
plague
Battle of
happening?
Hastings,
I think the fact that
that was some crazy stuff.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go
He was
go
saying
ahead.
battle. He was just putting us in.
I'm trying to put
William of
myself in
Orange.
I was going to say that the simple fact that we speak English might... Well, no. 1,000 years ago, you said. English
there was-
existed.
But
Sorry.
then they just be like, you're some random.
I went way far back there. I went too far back. Sorry, guys.
Did Scotland exist at that point?
Oh, yeah. Did
Is that
America
right?
exist?
No.
Not even close, man.
Cheers.
Not even
I would
close.
just
No,
be like,
that's right.
I'm
Oh, they'd
from
be
a
like,
place
"What's
called
this?"
America.
What is this accent?
And you're just going to have to wait and figure it out.
So you could be like, hey, get me a boat, a big old boat, and let's travel west, and I bet you we find something. That might be. I mean, that's a long.
You'd be like the new
Give me
Viking.
6 months of your
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
Finally
and we'll
leave.
find something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta-
Nobody would know the name Leif Erikson if they'd be like, who is that guy? I'd be like, it's Mike Christman. No. Like, you would have been in the history books. And then we would all know.
1492, Mike Christman sailed the ocean blue. You'd have to convince him to give you a boat.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
You'd have to choose a different date so that it like you like choose your own rhyme. You know.
What rhymes with
Yeah.
Mike? What? Well, yeah,
And
I'd
it-
have to.
Yeah. It's so far back that you wouldn't even be able to like talk about a computer. You wouldn't be able to talk about like none of that would even.
The fact that we wouldn't be able to function, I think, would be proof enough.
That's true.
Where do we go? How do we?
Yeah, that's true.
What's the Wi-Fi password?
When you couldn't
guys
even
need
use
Wi-Fi,
like
you could win this thing.
and that's like Bronze Age, Iron Age, like all the things. So you couldn't like make some tool because they have all the tools. Like all the ages have happened.
Yeah,
The
this is a hard
industrial age
question.
hasn't happened. That's an interesting.
What is it? I think it's Nate Bargatze that does a bit on like if he traveled back in time,
Mm-hmm.
he would actually like be doing a lot worse. That like because he wouldn't be able to prove that he was
he would
from the
just look like an
future because he
idiot.
doesn't know anything now, and it's like that's I think if we went back in time, people would just be like they just feel sorry for
Yeah.
us because we didn't know how to do anything.
Either
We'd,
that or
yeah.
we'd be stoned to death.
Stoned to
'cause
death.
we think we're witches,
Witchcraft.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Witches.
Yeah, like soothsayers or something.
Couldn't you do like fire? Because obviously they had fire back then.
I know you'd want to learn how something was invented first before you went back
To
Like,
prove and then to do it. Or,
Oh,
just
yeah.
let me figure out how this light bulb works, all right? And then let me go back.
Oh, make a light bulb for him.
Yeah.
That would do it.
Then
you
you'd
would-
have to have a grid. You'd have to understand.
well,
how
you could
to
do whatever
power.
Thomas Edison.
Well, you
That's
can
what
do
I'm
the little
saying.
switch. You can make the little Edison
Yeah, I'm
switch.
saying we got
But
to
I don't know how he did
ChatGPT
that.
some stuff to figure out how to do it, and then we'll send
See,
us
I'd
back.
fly a kite with a key on it like Benjamin Franklin. And then I'd be like, let me introduce you to this guy, Steven, who's got this light bulb thing. And we're
Whoa.
gonna put our heads together.
Whoa.
But who would
And our
who would
buddy
be
Mike is here
remembered?
too.
No, you want Steven to have the kite because he's going to get like electrocuted.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and then you say, I've got the light bulb.
Let me tell you
You
about a
gotta
guy
think-
I
gotta
used to
think
know.
through
Is that the point of the key so you don't get electrocuted?
Well, he didn't. I mean, he flew the kite and he didn't die.
Right.
So I'm like,
But he got electrocuted though, didn't he?
I don't
Well,
know.
the
I think
key-
it probably went into the key.
Yeah, it was the key. Wasn't that the
But-
point of the key?
Wouldn't
I
it
don't
travel down the
know.
kite?
I just remembered we're recording a podcast.
Yeah, sorry.
But I thought that was an interesting
theologically
question because
based
it's not
podcast.
far enough back where you can like really make an impact because of all the stuff you're saying. But it's too
I think
far
the best
back.
one
To,
I think I would get some people and like give me a boat and some dudes and for 6 months let's go west. I bet you we find something. I don't know what else.
and then you got to come back. It would take you a year to prove yourself.
Yeah. You might die too.
And would you prove you're from the future, or would you just prove you're a great explorer?
Oh, wow.
Either way, I'm probably rich.
How many actually died before getting there?
Either way, I got money.
Probably more than I know about.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I wonder if-
That's what you could do. You could go. You'd be like, I know of a lake that looks like this.
Oh.
And if we sail this way, so you gotta give them something specific to be like, yeah.
Do you think
Landmark.
though, like, I mean, if you showed up and you literally had a baseball cap on, they'd be like, "What the heck is that thing?" Like even just something simple
Probably
like
get
that.
stoned.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'd probably get stoned, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I think at the end of the day, we're probably going to die.
As soon as you appear, you're dead. So forget it. You either need to have that light bulb in your hand when you poof wherever you're going, or you're done.
Yeah.
What was that one movie, Jumper, was it? Where they could jump from place to place?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That was a cool
yeah.
movie.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
I secretly wished
I
I
think.
could do that.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of 1,000 years,
Yeah, we didn't make
today
a
we're
whole lot of
talking
progress
about
there.
whether or not there's marriage in heaven. Stephen, Pastor Stephen,
I didn't
preached
really
this
talk
sermon.
about it, but-
No, you didn't. But
I just
we
skirted
probably
around
will.
it. This is what the text is actually
You
about.
quickly answered it and then went.
It was funny. It was like, I'm not gonna talk about this.
Which
well,
is,
let's let you, Stephen, if you don't mind.
Uh-huh.
Without feeling you have to repreach everything, summarize why you handled it the way you did, the text.
Yeah, so I think we've got a situation. I mean, so Jesus has faced many of these situations at this point where he's faced up against a religious structure of some sort, and they're trying to trap him. They're trying to back him into a corner, and they try to get as clever as they possibly can in order to discredit him, maybe even hope that he says something heretical, so on and so forth, so that they can back him into a situation, discredit him, or even have ammunition to get him killed. So I think what we see in Jesus' response is him sort of cutting through all the BS, if you will, and just going, okay, I see what your hearts are doing. Let's talk about that. And I love the savviness of Jesus, right? Because he still does handle the questions, but he does it in a way that then like backs them into a corner.
Yeah, and he like right places it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you think that you're pushing me back? Well, I'm going to be walking forward as I answer this question, and you're going to find yourself in a corner. So yeah,
That's good.
that's why.
General thoughts, just as we jump off here.
no,
Other than that?
I thought it was great because that exact treatment I think is cool because even it was a different approach than even I had as I saw the topic, and we know we're in the same sermon planning circles and but the minimal treatment of what on the surface seems like the big
Focus,
deal.
yeah.
You did what Jesus did, and kind of like you did get to it eventually, but you dug into the heart issue. I mean, which is what a good preacher does, is takes the same approach as Jesus. Is usually a pretty good way to go about it. But it was
Just do what Jesus did. There we go.
And-
my expectations for this sermon were probably similar to the Sadducees, and you treating it similar to Jesus was, it was just it landed very well. It was really cool. It was very good exegesis. Well done. It's like you preached a sermon or two before.
Appreciate that. I didn't know I was being evaluated today, but this is great. I appreciate the compliments.
Now the cons are later, right? I give them all the cons.
Yeah, the
cons are
right.
later.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, consular.
Let's go.
That's good. So right off the jump, you said write this down. So I'm just going to read it and we can react.
That's just like a thing I do. It's like
I
one of
loved it.
those, like, it has really nothing to do with the sermons.
Okay,
but
well, I'll skip that one
No,
then.
no, don't. I just feel, they're like two sentences.
Yeah.
But you can,
No,
go ahead.
I thought it was.
ahead.
I think it's
Now
thought.
I'm feeling self-conscious, guys. I'm going to leave. You
Now
guys
we're
can just talk about the sermon.
So Stephen weirdly told everyone, no, write this down. We shouldn't answer people without considering their character, heart, and motives. Thoughts?
Yes, agree. On an immediate, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think what you're saying here is we need to. That's not the lens. It's the thinking through someone's character, heart, and motives is the lens through which we think before we're to engage with somebody, it's not what is going to choose whether or not we engage with
That's
them.
right.
Correct.
That's I'm not using that as I don't want to talk to you or deal with you.
That's right.
But it's as I respond to you or engage with you, I'm taking this into account.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think my heart is let's be mindful of the intent of that person. Because there's times, especially in ministry, that somebody will come to you and they've already got their agenda all mapped out. And you're like, what is this path that we are weaving that you have brought me on today that I did not invite myself on, but here I am with you. And if we're not doing that work ahead of time, it's yes, of course we're going to engage them.
Yeah.
But how we engage them sometimes has to change.
That's good.
When we're faced with specifically toxic people,
Yeah.
and you could throw the Sadducees into that category.
Yeah, and I think it's just being wise in ministry, the way that I think we should always do that. We should always come to any conversation with an evaluatory lens. Whether it's somebody has a bad motive in their heart or somebody just has a different experience. I often find that a lot of conversations we have in Christian circles, especially, I would say as Christians in the circles we're in, you may be in conversation with somebody that has a completely different foundation that they are speaking, arguing from. So having, again, that savviness to understand how we engage with that person without compromising what we believe, what our foundation is, allows us a more powerful witness, I think. So, yes, I think, again, in this context, being savvy and really understanding that, the character, the heart, the motives behind what the Sadducees are saying or questioning. There's part of me that's just like, they must have all gotten to a point where they were like, we shouldn't talk to this guy anymore. Like, we really shouldn't engage with him because he's always, I
wonder if the Pharisees were like, okay, Sadducees,
you're up.
Yep.
And that didn't work. They're like, all right, let's get Judas. Like, I'm over this.
This isn't working. We gotta
let's get one of the weak ones.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think to that point too, we talked a little bit this morning just about, we could even expand, you're kind of getting at this, but we could also expand this thought to, it's really just good counsel to take a pause.
Yes.
Before you're arguing with someone, whether they're Christian or not a Christian, could be a neighbor, could be like whatever. And you might not be evaluating their like character, but their heart, like where they're at, do they know Jesus? Do they not know Jesus? Like, how does that change your, I don't know, conversation, I guess, tone, what you
because
talk
it
about.
could. I mean, they're in this situation, it could be a bait and switch.
Yeah, sure.
And so their sole purpose could be to simply get you riled up. Yeah. And then the moment that you're riled up, how you would tackle a particular topic, subject, argument is going to be different every single time. That's why, I think I've said it before in podcasts. Nicole and I would always disagree with this, but she's Italian, so she's more emotionally expressive, and I'm Scottish, and I'm not very expressive at all.
But she can make good sauce.
She makes good sauce.
Yeah, okay, good.
Well, her dad makes good sauce. She has to learn. She doesn't make the sauce. He still makes the sauce. They haven't transferred the power yet. The baton is not being
the families haven't convened yet.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, the families haven't met. It's a ceremony. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
I actually think it is a little bit. I had a friend that was like Italian.
Oh, for sure it is.
And like she was like literally third in line to make I don't remember what it was. It was some sort of pasta.
That's a real thing.
She was like literally third in line. Like she knew it. Yep. That person has to die. That person has to die. That person has to die. And then I need to make
the family.
Yeah.
Because it's a generational thing. You pass it down.
Yeah. It's such like a rich thing.
Wild.
It's interesting.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
So she'll get it one day. Good for you.
Yeah. Got to keep on top of it.
I can't even remember what my point was.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Welcome to Exiles. Welcome to Exiles. Okay. Point number 1. Unhealthy hearts will hinder a clear understanding. And one cool point you had here, you guys can share what you thought too, but a contentious person is most vulnerable not through their points of weakness, but rather when their perceived strengths are dismantled.
Can you say that again?
Yes. A contentious person is most vulnerable not through their points of weakness, but rather when their perceived strengths are dismantled. And so I thought about myself and I was like, oh my gosh, that actually is true. Like that's just true. That's just a human thing. Like when you feel like you have something together or you are presenting a certain way in a strength or in a confidence or whatever, and something comes against that, I feel like that's way more, what's the word? Yeah,
Just unsettling.
Than if it's like some side issue.
You're
or
way better than me. You thought about yourself first. I was thinking about other people.
well, that's fine too.
You're better than me.
That's fine too. Yeah. Anyway.
But it's like this premeditative nature of the Sadducees.
Yeah.
Like we don't know, but I wonder if they all got together like collectively and they're like, okay, what's the best argument that we can put together? Like, so they're coming at him.
Yeah, they had to have.
In strength, this is one of their strongest, most articulate argument. I mean, they've got probably a whole theology and understanding around why they don't believe the resurrection exists.
If he says this, we'll say that.
Yeah. They probably mapped it all out. And then Jesus just like, oh, that's what you're most strongest in? Let's just dismantle that. Yeah. And then you've got no North Star at that point.
Right.
Like when your perceived strengths are dismantled, it's like, okay, whoops, I got nothing now. Now I'm at a point of weakness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then it creates so we'll look at myself, Daniel.
Okay,
so when those perceived areas of strength are pushed back on, or if that house of cards fall, or even if it's a legitimate strength, but all of a sudden it's being challenged in a unique way, and that's when the defensiveness, that's when the ugliest parts of myself, even if I'm, even if I can keep it from coming out of my mouth, I know in my heart, I'll just be like, you're doing that. That's crap, and this is crap, and this whole thing is stupid, and I will revert to defensiveness when those perceived areas of strength are challenged.
Sure.
And I've seen that in other people too, but I know for myself that's a thing.
Thanks for including yourself.
Yeah,
nice.
I got a couple things to work on.
Selfless.
It's beautiful. Humility.
Self-aware, introspective.
Amazing.
I'm amazed always that Jesus and how much boldness it takes to go, hey, you don't know the scriptures and you don't know the power of God.
Yeah.
Could you just envision him just like calmly and coolly saying it?
Yes.
Like the Sadducees are ready to go.
He's not
he's
yelling.
just like,
I don't think he's yelling.
Well, that's because you don't know them. And I just picture that dichotomy.
I almost hear it as like pity. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
That's how I hear it. That's how I read it. And I know we're not supposed to do that, but that's what I'm doing.
Well, I think in that statement, the contentious person is most vulnerable, not through their points of weakness, but rather when their perceived strength are dismantled, because it all of a sudden becomes a perception.
Right.
In their minds, I think they're coming with this really strong point. Like, I know this. I do know the power of God. I do know the scriptures. I mean, that's their whole world. And all of a sudden, it's like that was just a perceived strength. That wasn't something that I could actually build anything on. And I picture Jesus just, and again, having the perspective of he's the Son of God, being in that space, being so confident in what he's saying, knowing that anything he retorts with is actually going to be the truth spoken. Yeah, and it's just an interesting.
That's a really profound comment right there. Let's sit there for a second.
Let's slow it down here.
No,
guys.
that was good.
But I think it is. It's just this idea that it wasn't a perceived strength. It was a strength until all of a sudden it was only a perceived strength, and that's what made it crumble. So how many times do we have that in our lives where I'm like, I'm so confident in this argument or this thing, and then somebody just, presents another side of the argument with a heart posture of empathy and humility, and I'm like, oh,
dang.
Yeah. And so think
about that.
The group that I think about, I get, and even the point, unhealthy hearts will hinder a clear understanding. My first thought is Christians, and so that, and all the secondary issues that we just get like wrapped around the axle with, like election or the rapture, like the end times, like all these things that we get all worked up about.
Leave churches over.
Lead churches over in terrible ways, and like will cause such a stink. And even I don't know, poor Derek, like he will sometimes like he'll use a phrase and then people will read into it 13 levels deep that he never intended, and all of a sudden he's getting emails and
emails from all sides too. It's never
and I guess do that, everybody.
Which is so fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Ask your questions, but not everything. And that's where sometimes there can be some unhealth there, where I'm reading that as a thing for the secondary thing, and I'm going to make us think about it, when in fact the unhealth causes us to focus on these secondary issues rather than seeing them in light of the primary issues, the ones that really matter. And now you get wrapped around the axle about these things, and it pulls you away from understanding, but also from community with the church. And so,
That's good.
unhealthy hearts definitely hinder a clear understanding.
Yeah, and I wonder sometimes how much of our strength or perceived strength is drawn from how many people agree with us, right? You know, our other people's perception. It's a lot easier to find people that agree with you on those secondary issues. It's a lot tougher to go in and say, you know, coming into something in a posture of weakness and saying, you know, I go back to 2 Corinthians where Paul says, you know, the Lord responded, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. If we're trying to draw power or prestige or reputation based around our secondary issues, we're missing the point of actually leaning into our own feebleness and weakness and relying on the Lord for strength. And I think that's what the Sadducees are doing here. In essence, they're relying on their knowledge. They're relying on their own understanding of the situation. They're relying on their own understanding and the way that they have brought a secondary issue to the forefront.
Right.
Of this, you know what I mean?
Their whole the thing that makes them a thing is a secondary issue.
Yes.
And then, Jesus said, well, then you don't know the scriptures or the power of God.
Yeah,
because you're wrapped around the axle.
The secondary is the primary to
Correct.
you.
Has totally warped, and then
Their secondary issue has become their identity. And so they have a misplaced identity.
I feel like that's like Christianity in America too.
100%.
Yeah.
Like
That
we've
is
created
American
like
church.
our own problems because of all
That we have so many denominations. I mean, people are going to look at like Pharisees and Sadducees. Well, look, how could they? Guys, we've done that times 10.
Oh, we have like 1,000.
So many denominations where
So many flavors of Baptists. So many flavors of
within denomination
charismatic.
we're
within.
98% aligned, but God forbid you disagree with me on the 2%. That actually,
crazy.
I don't think Jesus is probably like, what?
would
I
be
didn't
the-
even, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
An interesting exercise to go back and replace Sadducees with like Presbyterian or
No, for
Pharisees
real.
with Baptists.
Yeah, Baptists.
Or, you know,
and
and be like,
That
oh,
would be
Or
fun.
that's
like
weird. That
Baptist,
sounds-
Southern
I like that.
Baptist. No, I mean,
Yeah, you could go
Yeah.
within.
guys.
The Catholics, the Lutherans, and the Presbyterians all got together and said, how are we going to get Jesus? And
They're to blame. Martin
and the
Luther.
Baptists. Oh, there's plenty of Baptists in there.
They were just eating potlucks. That's
They
all.
were just, they were a little too busy.
Jeez, oh man. Okay, so second point. Unhealthy hearts will cast a shadow over God's beauty. True. Next.
Very true. Yeah.
You guys groaned, so one of you two have to say something.
That was a
No,
deep
I've-
groaning.
We're just approaching 40. That's how it's happening.
That's what it is. The spirit groans. No, I've been challenged recently by this word beauty. So I have a very, I grew up with a pretty artistic streak in my body. And so there's something about even God's creation, that there is a beauty that comes with God, an inherent beauty. He is beauty. And so to look at the people that he's made and think of them as his creations, the image bearers, unhealthy hearts, bring this cloud in over it just hurts my heart. That's why I groan.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's okay,
it just hurts my heart because it's like, if we could all experience the richness of the beauty of our Creator God, and we could actually see that unfettered from sin, I mean, that is what the new heavens and the new earth will be.
Yeah.
What's some of the unhealth, either for you or that you've seen? I mean, you've been in your role for a solid, 4 months. So, but like either you've seen or seen in yourself the unhealth that tends to cast that shadow over God's beauty.
I really do. I think it comes back to things like pride. I think it's 1 John that talks about the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, pride of life. This idea that somehow people find their identity in different things, and then make, like we're talking about, make these secondary issues primary issues, and they blur and they cloud the beauty of what God's creation is intended to be. I think especially interpersonally, it's people. It's people's prejudice. It's injustice. It's looking at whether individual people or people groups as lesser than or different than or whatever that is. Like that does not exist in the new heavens and the new earth.
Right.
Like it just doesn't exist. So when we put up these barriers in society, I even look at broken families that have been kind of torn apart even recently by the election. Like some people that have posted on Facebook, like I'm not speaking to my parents anymore because of the way that they voted. And I'm like, man, it's just that's not beautiful.
Those things that divide. There's one of the most beautiful parts, I think, of like eternity will be the fact that we're going to look around and we're going to see people we never expected to see worshiping with us in God's church.
Yes.
Like we're all, and that beautiful diversity is going to be so beautiful. And so that unhealth, the boundaries we put up, the distances, the barriers we put up between racially, socially, economically, politically, theologically, as we like break that down. Yeah, that unhealth here is clouding, which I think would be one of the most beautiful pieces of the next life.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's just that statement, unhealthy hearts will cast a shadow over God's beauty. It hurts my heart because, like, and I'm part of it, but we're missing out on the abundant life that Jesus promised, that he delivered in his resurrection. And that is so tragic's not even a deep enough word. And beauty is inherently good. It's a trait of God. So when we cloud that, man, I my heart goes out to people that don't.
Well, then that even makes me think, like, I mean, the point actually isn't to get a bunch of people into heaven. The point is actually to bring heaven down here. Because God's going to renew and restore and redeem everything that we currently see. So the
it's
unhealth,
to foreshadow the beauty to us.
Correct. So we should try to bring as much of that beauty into the world as we can. And that unhealth clouds that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's exactly like what we see the Sadducees doing here. Right? They're essentially trying to get their point across about the resurrection because they don't believe in the doctrine of the resurrection. And instead of looking at marriage as the beautiful thing that it was intended to be, the foreshadowing of the marriage to come when God is reunited with his people, they're just turning this beautiful thing into a technicality in order to turn their secondary issue into a primary issue in order to stump Jesus. And I mean, there's that is so ugly that it is in direct contrast to the beauty that they're not able to see here. Like you guys are so hell-bent on this issue, making fun of this resurrection issue and backing Jesus into a corner, that you've totally missed the beauty, the point, and the purpose of marriage. So it's not, Jesus might go, well, I'm not even sure that Jesus is actually answering the question here more than he's saying, you're missing it.
You're missing the point.
The point is that, listen, it's not about marriage in heaven. He says you'll neither, marry or be joined in marriage up there. The point is that one day you'll be with your creator. That's the beauty in it. Like the angels are right now. That's what you're actually missing.
And to take that and to twist it and to use it as a tool to get that's actually, I mean, the way you couch that, the offense to God in that, the wickedness in that is a little bit astounding as you articulate that.
But we're not like, I know it might feel like a stretch, but we're not that far away from our culture today. Like I think the warning is true. That's why I even asked the question in the sermon, like what about Christianity was beautiful to you that's no longer beautiful now, and why is that the case? Or when you look at other believers' lives and they see beauty that you don't see, that should be a flag. Like let's throw that flag on the field and go, holy smokes. Because I remember I'd used Ben Larson as an example in my sermon. Ben had COPD, and he, oh my gosh, like we would have testimony nights we would used to have an evening service, kind of like a grace nights, worship night type thing. And he would get up and give a testimony, and like that was it. I wasn't getting up after that to preach. Like the beauty of God that he was able to capture in the profoundness that he was able to present was just like uncanny. But God had used this suffering in his life to just show him what he needed to see as beautiful. And I would always be challenged by him, like, oh my gosh, like he sees such beauty in the scriptures and such beauty with his relationship with Christ, or beauty with the relationships that God has given him. I can't see that. Like, I literally can't see those things.
Right.
You know, I'm a natural cynic. I'm a natural critic. I'm naturally going to pick things apart. I'm like, I need more bends in my life.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason. There's something wrong. Are you guys proud that I didn't use?
I actually thought about it. I thought about it. I was like, but you did get to say it a lot in different ways.
That's right.
I was gonna start counting it and be like,
as I was writing the sermon, I was thinking about you guys.
No, you did great.
I was like, I am not going to say it this time.
Yeah. When you were telling that story in your sermon about him, I thought about, not to be a downer, but I immediately thought about Pastor Dick Page.
Yeah.
And I don't know how well any of you got to know him, but so he recently passed, and the story that got reported is that he passed and his arms were kind of like out right before he passed, like a hug. And I was talking to another Christian about that, let's say it that way. And I was emotional about it because I know of Dick's leg. Like, I've seen him over
you got a front row
decades.
seat.
He is who he is. Like, he lived all of it out as much as I think humanly possible, at least my perception. And so for me, that tracked. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like emotional about it and thinking like, wow, these are the moments that I think God gives us that are like, it's good, keep going.
Yep.
You know, like it's like that injection. Of course, a saint died, but he's better off, and those kind of like comforts and things. And that person, and this is no shade. It's an example. And that person was like, yeah, I don't really believe that kind of stuff, because like the person who was there was probably just like, oh, he lifted his arms up. I'm like, oh. And I'm more like you. I'm usually the one that's like cynical about things, and then that person. So to be hit with. Again, I'm not this introspective person, but to be hit with that, I was immediately thinking like, this is how I would normally react to a story like this if I didn't know.
If you didn't know the person,
Dick Page, you know,
that person's missing a beautiful moment.
Yeah, they're missing the beauty and the like a reinforcement of a promise, and that's normally me. But that's why I'm sharing that story, not to put that person down, but just I immediately thought of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the things that you just bringing up Dick real quick.
Yeah.
He was such a servant, and one of the things that he mentioned in the last few weeks here was just the fact that he continued to just do what he thought he was asked to do, and if he saw a need, he addressed it. And I think again, and he did. He was one of those people that's like, he's not saying that, he lived it out. That's just what it was, but. Even that portion of that, we're talking about God's beauty. Like, what an opportunity we have in the moment to be agents to redeem the beautiful things in life. Yeah. To say, I see a need and I am going to go in and fix it. I am going to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And that's our call, like our redeeming narratives call. We are, like you said, Mike, to bring heaven down, to redeem, to re-beautify the spaces that have been tainted by sin and that are have a shadow cast over them, and that's just a good example of a healthy heart leaning into those spaces where they can create beauty, heart connected to God. So
that's good. That's great. Point number 3, unhealthy hearts will ultimately cloud us from the resurrected Jesus. I feel like we've been building toward this.
We've been hitting that sucker pretty good. It's like Stephen crafted his sermon like that.
Wow,
potentially.
Interesting.
Like, I just took a guess. Just
took a guess.
Blindfolded.
Just with his finger.
We'll do that one. Yeah.
I'm convinced that Sarah picks these ones for me. I always get the weird ones.
I did love the quip. What is it?
Her email.
If you have any questions about marriage and heaven, you can email me at Sarah.
That was funny. I laughed really hard.
Got her.
She's out gallivanting right now.
She's in Europe. She can use a couple emails.
She could
use a couple emails.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. Will she be back by?
Well, she'll be back by then. So she'll be in a fresh space to be able to.
The week of Thanksgiving.
Whoops, sorry, Sarah.
Oh well.
She'll need somebody to anchor her back to reality.
Yeah. You're not in Europe anymore, kid.
Yeah, that was nice. Let's get back to it. Any other any thoughts on that, or last thoughts, Stephen? Anything you wanted to make sure we touch on too?
So for me, I'm thinking, as I was thinking this, and we had talked about, like, Stephen did a very good kind of help people get introspect and look at the hearts. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a number of conversations where I come back to that. We shouldn't answer people that concern their character, heart, and motives. And yeah, in ministry, it invites people to have conversations with you. The beautiful part of this job, more often than not, those people stepping in have their own agendas and their own ideas and their own intentions with it. And so I've just, I guess practically speaking, as I do that, as I consider someone's character, heart, and motives when they're talking to me about any number of secondary issues, and I've found myself almost like intentionally telling myself, like, stop, don't. This is a listening time, not a responding time.
That's good.
And I could list off all manner of things that people have come to me with, kind of their pre-prepared arguments, if you will. Yeah. And just like ask questions. Hey, why do you think that way? What do you like? And not like, oh, well, scripture. Yeah, but why do you think that way? Tell me your story.
That's good.
And all of a sudden, more often than not, someone's overemphasis of a secondary doctrine or whatever issue is less about the scriptural support and more about an emotional attachment or reaction to something in their life or in their
something
story.
that happened to them. Or, totally.
Because
that's good.
I think of when Derek, which sermon, whenever he was talking about like election and like Calvinism, Arminianism, free will and election, and Derek was like, his professor listed off all the scriptures, one that said free will and one that said election, and there was the exact same number on either side. So you can pull scripture and support anything, but it's probably more of a personal. If you bend one way or the other, there's probably something personal in there. And so I guess in any case, long-winded answer, safe. That tends to be, I try to make that my framework. Tell me your story. Let me hear why you believe that way. And then that helps me be able to respond and walk with them.
Well, I think it helps them too. Like, let me just hang on. I put on all this, it's like almost armor walls, if you want to say. And that just starts to like crack that. Like, what? But why did I put that wall up? Oh, right. This is when my dad did this, or when or the pastor hurt me this way, or whatever. Yeah, that's good, Mike. That's really good.
So this point is actually two combined, because I was really going to have four, but in a 30-minute sermon, it's just not. It's not
10
possible.
minutes each. Let's go.
Yeah. So this would have been point number 4, and point number 3 would have been something to the extent I didn't have time to flesh it out or word it. But sick hearts contort history, because what Jesus does is that he goes back. Right? He goes back to, that may be a better one, but he goes back to the Old Testament. And he says, listen, he says that, the resurrection is clearly real because I'm the God of, remember Moses at the burning bush. He said that he was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I ultimately settled with point number 4 because if you can trace that thread, you ultimately get to Jesus.
That's good. Yeah.
So the point is that their unhealth, and Jesus is basically saying, like, you don't know the scriptures. Let me actually take you back to the scriptures and show you what you missed. You missed me in the whole point. And he's saying, if I made this, or God made this promise, which, yes, it would be Jesus, but made this promise to Moses and said, I'm not making a promise to somebody who's dead. This promise that I'm making, and the promise that I make to people is a living promise. And that's why Jesus ultimately goes on to say, I am the resurrection and the life, and all who come to the Father. No one comes to the Father except through me. So he's ultimately pointing to himself here by taking them back to the scriptures that they don't understand. And so that was how I got to that.
That's cool.
How I got to that conclusion. But I just thought it was so crafty of Jesus to, he starts by saying, you don't know the scriptures and the power of God. I'll answer your marriage question. You're missing the whole beauty too of all of this, turn it into a technicality. And here's how you don't know the scriptures, because you would have actually seen me. Because Jesus is standing right in front of them.
Wild.
So they're not seeing the resurrection and the life here. And Jesus says, news travels fast, even if it's on foot, right? I mean,
well, you can tell that by
this
crowds
guy.
and stuff.
They're trying to discredit this guy. So they know there's something up with this guy. He's the long-awaited Messiah, but they don't want him to be. So they're literally staring the resurrection in the face.
Wild.
And missing it completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating that really when sometimes I just think about these groups, they weren't really, I don't know, sometimes I read it and I'm like, you guys, you weren't really looking for the Messiah.
And I think that's the point that he's trying to get to.
Like you're not looking for, you're looking for just to maintain the status quo.
Power, control, reputation.
Yeah. I'm in a good spot. I'm in a really good spot. I'm comfortable. How often do we do that in our everyday lives? Say, well, I'm comfortable, so I'm not going to go out and push into that space that needs something. How am I
think that's the application, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I think what has to be very clear here as well is that these guys, for all intents and purposes, these guys are the good guys.
Yeah. Right.
Like in the grand narrative of religion in the first century.
Right.
Yeah, they're the good. So we might come to church every single week, right? But if we're constantly dying on the hill of secondary issues, like how much different are we from the Pharisees and the Sadducees?
Yeah, that's good.
And you might even hear this and, convince yourself otherwise. But I think the warning, we need to heed the warning here that we could literally dedicate our lives to this thing, this religious structure, but our hearts are continuing to be unhealthy, and ultimately we miss what Jesus wants us to see.
Yeah, and that I think you're right. That's what I worry about so much in the modern church and in the modern structure that we've built. Are we really kind of hitting the nail on the head when it comes to what we're actually called to do? Are we missing the power and the call on our lives that the resurrection brings us? And sacrificing that for, again, something that we might think very much is that, well, no, this is a good structure to build. This is the right thing to do. This is the right cause to kind of push forward.
And it could be good.
And it could be really, really good, but are we missing great? Are we missing, I just think there's a... Yes, it's just a really good thing to continually self-examine what we're actually building and pushing forward, and continue to challenge it all the time.
And something I very much appreciate about Grace is that we are very intentional about having a big tent. We make the main things the main things. We make the secondary things very clearly the secondary things. It
causes a lot more emails, but
it costs a lot of emails. But we invite conversation, right? Because we want that authentic interaction. However, we're not gonna. And Derek does such a fantastic job and receives so many emails because he walks that fine line of presenting truth without staking a claim on these secondary things.
Right.
But dang it, do we stake a claim when it comes to that primary thing?
Absolutely.
And I think the mark of a mature Christian, one who's truly chasing after Jesus and is looking forward to the resurrection for all it's really going to be. And a mature Christian can engage in those conversations, can fellowship with people who fall on the different side of those. A mature Christian can do all that, knowing that what binds us together is infinitely more important than what could ever possibly separate us if we are brothers and sisters in Christ. And so that's good. I love that we're a church like that. I want us to be more of a church like that.
And I think you're saying can, but the heart behind that statement is we must. Right? Yes. We must step into those all the time. Like that's actually the call that we have, the responsibility that we have.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think the warning here is also true that Jesus might back you into a corner.
Yeah, that's good.
Your perceived strengths, he might dismantle one day if you hold on to them for too long.
And how do you react?
Yeah, and how do you react?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, let's be done for today. The discipleship question, I thought this is one of the top ones that fit in this whole series.
I didn't even need to think about it. I know we have
it's so great.
We have those four, but
yeah, it's a really good one. It lines up perfectly. What's holding me back from looking more like Jesus? So you can literally just study this whole thing and just look at yourself. Wow. It's great. So you guys can go to whoisgrace.com/Mark for resources, more of those kind of discipleship questions. You can also submit a question or let us know how you're feeling about the podcast. We've been asking you for 2 years. We'll see if something happens. Probably not. I'm going to keep saying it.
It'll be the last couple of episodes of
we'll get
season
1,000. 4. We'll have to do season 5 Q&A.
We'll do a Q&A. That'll be fun.
It's not happening, people. Put in your emails. Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us. See you next week. Bye.